Alrighty, Algebra 2 students, this is the review tutorial for the Unit 2 test. Question 1. Solve 6 absolute value of x minus 8 equals 12. Now, I told you all, before you can solve absolute value equations, you must get this absolute value bar by itself. You must get the absolute value of x minus 8 by itself. So the process for this particular problem is to get rid of the 6. No, you cannot distribute the 6 into the absolute value. The only thing you can do is divide both sides by 6. When you do that, you will have the absolute value of x minus 8 is equal to 2. Now, since it's an equation, you write the equivalent equations next. Remember, there's always two cases when dealing with absolute value. So the first case for this particular problem is x minus 8 equals 2. And then the second case is x minus 8 equals negative 2. So remember, it's always remove the material from the box and then equal it to the outcome, the original outcome. The second case is always remove the information from the box and equal it to the opposite outcome. Now solve each individual equation. Yes, you have to solve both. So on the first one, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. Which would leave me with x is equal to 10. On the second one, it turns out I'm doing the same thing, adding 8 to both sides, which in this case would leave me with x is equal to 6. Now, before I box them, I need to check to see if they're actual solutions. So when you check the equation, you use the original. So 6 absolute value of x minus 8 equals 12. So on our first check, I'm going to replace x with 10. Now I get the left-hand side of the equal sign simplified. First, bring down our 6. Again, you can't distribute until your absolute value bars. So 10 minus 8 is 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2. So it ends up being 6 times 2. Now, you can't take multiplication until you remove the 2 from the bar properly. Now you can multiply, so 6 times 2 is 12. So yes, this solution of 10 checks out. Now we check with 6. All right, so again, I bring down the 6 outside the walls. 6 minus 8 is a negative 2. The absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2, so it's 6 times 2 again, which is 12. So both of them check out. So x equals 10 is a solution, as well as x equals 6. All right, and number 2 is just a simple equation with the variable on both sides. My rule of thumb is with equations is to move the variable, the smaller variable, to join big brother variable. So that in this case that would be 2x. So subtract him from both sides. And then I have negative 9, because that minus sign travels with the 9, equals 2x plus 1. And now subtract 1 from both sides because my x's are dominating the right. So that means everything else must move to the left. When I do that, I would get negative 10 equals 2x. And then if I divide both sides by positive 2, I would end up with negative 5 equals x. Again, divide both sides by positive 2. So negative 10 divided by positive 2 is a negative 5. And again, it's a good habit to check your solution to make sure your work is correct. So plug in negative 5. So I would get negative 10 minus 9 on the left, negative 20 plus 1 on the right. Negative 10 minus 9 is a negative 19. Negative 20 plus 1 is a negative 19. So my solution checks out. So yes, negative 5 is equal to x. That is my solution. Number 3 says, so I'm assuming we're solving. The absolute value of 3 minus, y minus 3, sorry, plus 2 equals 11. So this is a lot like question number 1. The first thing I have to do is get that absolute value by itself. So currently we have a plus 2 trying to get into the bar, but he's not allowed. So I'm going to move him to the other side of the street. So you're left with the absolute value of y minus 3 equals 9. And now we write our two cases. The first one is exactly like the original, except you're no longer in the bar. And the second case is the opposite of the original for your outcome only. So that means negative 9. Now, solve both individual equations. So I would add 3 to both sides. So I bring down my y, and 9 plus 3 is 12. In the second case, I'm also adding 3 to both sides. So I have y is equal to negative 6 this time. And again, now we check our work with the original. So the first one is 12. 12 minus 3 is 9. Absolute value of 9 is 9. And 9 plus 2 is 11. So that solution checks. Now we're going to check this second one. That's an 11. Sorry, ran out of space. So we're checking negative 6. Negative 6 minus 3 is a negative 12. Sorry, negative 9. The absolute value of negative 9 is positive 9. And 9 plus 2 is 11. So both solutions check out again in this scenario. So y is equal to 12 and y is equal to negative 6. Both of those solutions work. Number 4, the table below shows the relationship between the number of hours practiced and the number of free throws made for 5 players. Use your graphing calculator to create a prediction equation and determine how many free throws would theoretically be made if someone were to practice 15 hours. So this is the linear regression type of question that we just practiced. So we need to remember those keystrokes again for your test. So let's bring up my calculator. First things first, you want to clear out any data that might exist. So we go to stat 4. I want to hit second 1 to clear out list 1, comma, second 2, oops, I didn't register, second 2 to clear out list 2. Hit enter, and when it says done, you're good. Now we can enter our data. So go to stat, edit, to enter your x's and your y's. So hours practice is going to be our x's. Oops. And free throws made is going to be our y's. So our x's are going in L1 and our y's are going in L2. Just make that a habit and it makes things easier on in the long run. So you hit 2, enter, 4, enter, 6, enter, 8, enter, and 10. You make sure you hit enter after each value. Make sure they match up with the table, and then come to L2 and enter our y values. So 7, 17, 27, 37, and 47. Again, double check your table. Make sure you've entered everything correctly before you move on. Now, from here, if I want the equation, I would hit stat, right arrow to calculate, and then 4 for linear regression. It's asking where are your x's. We put our x's in list 1, drop down. Where are our y's? Our y's are in list 2, so leave it alone. You might want to store the regression equation. So again, that's alpha, trace, and let's choose y1. And then drop down, hover over calculate, hit enter. So our equation, the value for A is 5, so that's our slope. The value for B is negative 3. That's our y-intercept. So we would write the equation as y is equal to 5x minus 3. If b is negative, just put minus the value. Don't put plus negative. So this is our equation. The next thing it wants us to do is to predict the equation when when if somebody were to practice for 15 hours. So essentially, hours again is x. So we're going to replace x with 15. So you can go into your handy dandy calculator and allow it to help you with that calculation. But remember, if you hit alpha trace 1, the equation pops up. We stored our equation as y1. So now the only thing I need to do is hit parentheses 15, close parentheses, hit enter, and the calculator remembered that this specific equation, 5x minus 3. So I don't have to type 5 parentheses 15 parentheses minus 3 because the calculator remembered that that's where you stored it. That's where you saved that information. But if you didn't save the information during the linear regression piece, then yes, you're going to have to type it. All right, so let's just write down our result. So if somebody practiced 15 hours, we can predict that they would make 72 free throws. That's how you would interpret this information. Number 5. If scores on the final exam averaged 80% and scores ranged to be 13% higher or lower than average, what was the highest score earned on the final exam? So essentially, we know the average is 80%, and it ranges plus 13 and between plus and minus 13 from the average. So that means it goes between 93 and 67. So the lowest possible score for this test was 67, and the highest possible score was a 93. So the highest score earned on this exam is a 93. Number 6, again, we have a equation where the variable is on both sides. So again, we're going to move little brother to join big brother. In this case, little brother is M, so we're going to add him to the other side of the street to meet up with big bro. So that's 15 equals 3M plus 18. So now my M family is on the right hand side of the street or the equal sign, so that means the numbers are going to move to the left. So I'm going to have to subtract 18 now. 15 minus 18 is a negative 3. And lastly, I have to divide both sides by positive 3. So we have negative 1 is equal to M. Again, double check your solutions with the original equation and see that it balances, and you should be good. I'm going to pause right here for a moment and reconsume in just a moment.